Hi everybody. So this video is supposed to explain to you the key benefits of ANZFTA and ANZCERTA. So I know a lot of students tend to struggle not so much with the keywords, but actually understanding what the benefits are about. So in this video, I will show to you guys very clearly what you need to write in order for you to get the marks when answering questions about ANZCERTA and ANZFTA. But first of all, of course, I will explain to you what each of the benefits mean so that it's easier for you to understand and therefore remember. Okay, so let's look at the first FTA straight away. Okay, so ANZFTA. I'm sure you already know the key benefits. So here I have actually organized the information in a table. So it's really clear to you what you have to remember. So having said that, don't forget that you still have to apply your answers to the case. As you already know, this is very important in BME. What I'm explaining here is just a general way of answering the question. So let's say, for example, they're asking you literally and solely just for the benefits, then you write these points down. Okay, so let's just take a look. I'm only showing you 3 of the key benefits. There's actually 4 in your manual, but I'm gonna explain 3 here. Okay, so you can see in the table on in this column, you have the key benefits. So bear in mind, this is your point. Now, I'm sure you guys, although you're in denial sometimes, you already know this. Writing point alone barely gives you any mark. So your point must come together with explanation. So I'll say, let's say you write this key benefits plus explanation, you'll probably get 1 mark. Okay, if the examiner happens to be very lenient, he or she may give you 2 marks, but if you want to be safe, write key benefits, explanation, and further explanation to get the full 2 marks. Okay, so the first benefit, I'm sure you guys already know, ANZFTA. Remember, this is reduction, not total prohibition. So it's not totally tax-free or tariff-free. Here under ANZFTA, remember, it's the one with ASEAN countries as well. You have extensive tariff reduction and elimination commitments. Alright, and then in bracket here, you have 90 to 100% of tariff reduction on 96% of Australian exports. So I would really recommend that you remember this as well. And do not get the numbers mixed up, and be very clear that this only applies to Australian exports. So let's say you are from Malaysia and you're exporting. This 90 to 100% tariff reduction on your Malaysian exports doesn't actually apply. So it's from Australia's point of view. So be very careful. Alright, so let's say you've already mentioned the point. So what does this mean? Let's say they ask you for producers. So this is applying to the question, okay? Let's say they ask what is the benefit of ANZFTA to producers in Australia. So you can actually say that it's actually cheaper for producers because they don't actually have to include their export tariffs when considering the cost of production. So it actually lowers their production costs. And what does it mean for consumers? So obviously for Australian consumers, or any consumer under the ANZFTA region, it is going to be cheaper for them to obtain goods and services. Sorry, just goods actually. So it's going to be cheaper for them to obtain goods, and because it's lower tariffs, exporters are encouraged to sell their products in the region. So as consumers, you will automatically get more choices. So like for example, as a Malaysian, you will realize that we actually have a lot of products from Australia and New Zealand. If you're walking in a supermarket, you'll see like dairy products. Okay, obviously, one of their exports, which is like beef and meat. And this is because of the FTA that we are together with Australia in ANZFTA. Okay, so similarly for Australian producers, they will be able to obtain goods from ASEAN for a lower price and with more choices. Alright, so you can actually include some examples. I chose the easiest in a sense, iron and steel. So you just have to remember that for iron and steel in ANZFTA, tariffs on a majority of products related to iron and steel have been phased to 0 or to 10% or less. Okay, so you just want to give that kind of bracket because it's not absolutely 0% for every case. Right, it's just been reduced by a lot. Right, so that's the first point. Yeah, a lot, right? Okay, so next, So you can see here, this is just what you need to write generally and apply to whatever your case is asking for. Okay, the second one, which a lot of students struggle with, regional rules of origin. So what does regional rules of origin mean? Actually, it's very simple. You can see here the definition, criteria needed to determine the national source of a product. So let me ask you guys something. Let's say you buy a product and you flip to the back of the product and you realize that they actually tell you where it's produced or manufactured, okay, or where it's made. Have you ever seen a product which says made in China, Malaysia, the Philippines, Indonesia, Taiwan, and Bangladesh? No, it doesn't happen, right? Normally, they only show one country, although the product may have actually been produced in several countries. So regional rules of origin actually give the criteria, means the rules are given as to how we can determine which country to put. Okay, so which country do we say a product is from? Alright, so anyway, you don't really have to know what are all the rules. Essentially, it's just a set of rules, and the rules actually enable Australian exporters to tap into international supply chains within the ANZFTA region. So this is very useful because it means, let's say they ask what is the benefit to the producer, it actually helps them obtain raw materials and resources from the region. Okay, so it's essentially allowing Australian producers to easily get, let's say, raw materials from Malaysia. Okay, so this is the benefit of regional rules of origin to the producer. This is the definition, and this is your point. Okay, next one. ANZFTA promotes greater certainty for Australian service suppliers and investors, right? And actually, they protect investors legally. So, for example, this one you can find in the next page of the book. It allows funds of an investor to be transferred freely and without delay. So, in a sense, it's easier for the investor to transfer their cash or their capital. Okay, so this actually gives the investor obviously confidence. So they feel that the investment is safe, is protected. The country that they are expanding in ANZFTA cannot just essentially take over their property or take over their investments. So if they do breach any kind of if they actually do take away their property, or they make life difficult for the investor can actually refer disputes to international arbitration, which means they actually have legal rights against the state, they call it in law terms. Okay, so these are the benefits of ANZFTA. Right, so you can see here I've tabulated very clearly. You should know what you need to remember. Okay, moving on, the key benefits of ANZCERTA. The first one is pretty straightforward and similar to the benefit of the previous FTA. So, except you can see very clearly here, instead of being phased out or reduced in ANZCERTA, which means between Australia and New Zealand, all tariffs and quantitative import or export restrictions on goods are prohibited, means not allowed at all. Alright, and be careful, don't just say tariffs, because they also include quantitative import and export restrictions. So similarly, like before, depending on what a case is or the question is asking you about, you can talk about how it's cheaper for the producers, cheaper for the consumers, and you have more choices. So straightforward. Now the second one is the one that students tend to have difficulty in trying to understand. So for Australia and New Zealand, under ANZCERTA, they will try to minimize market distortions, which means, so in normal situations, governments tend to want to help their own local businesses. We all know that. And how do governments do this? Sometimes they give subsidy and incentive to their local business. So under ANZCERTA, Australia and New Zealand cannot do that. Alright, so this is to minimize market distortions. What does that mean? It means the Australian or New Zealand governments can't provide this export subsidies and incentives or assistance to local businesses anymore. So when you are competing with each other, it's definitely a fairer competition. So none of the local producers of either country will have a sort of like artificially inflated advantage. or they are being helped by the government. So they are not being cushioned by that anymore. So this is actually good for the customers especially. So customers will get better prices because of this competition. They'll get better quality. And in fact, even for the businesses, because they are pushed to compete, they could even become more innovative. Alright, so this is what this point actually means. Okay, now the third point is harmonization of trans-Tasman food standards. So this is good because it means that suppliers in the Australian food industry, you can see here, can easily export their goods to New Zealand and vice versa. So because their food standards are being recognized by each other, there are lower compliance costs for industry, fewer regulatory barriers, and more consumer choice. So Australians can now obtain food from New Zealand and vice versa. Why do we say lower compliance costs? It's because, let's say it's an Australian, you're exporting to New Zealand, you do not have to undergo extra quality tests, you don't have to, let's say, obtain different food certifications, you do not have to, let's say, apply, like in Malaysia, you have to be halal certified, etc. Okay, so in this case, they just recognize each other's food standards. Alright. And next, so it's similar, except it's a different category. So mutual recognition of goods and services and removal of technical barriers to trade, including the movement of skilled personnel between jurisdictions. So while Australia and New Zealand, they do not actually share the same qualification category, they don't actually share the same process in a way to get the qualifications. They still recognize each other's professional qualifications. So simply put, they actually do not standardize their rules and regulations for this, but they still recognize the profession in each other's country as long as they are fully qualified. So let's just say a qualified Australian doctor, as long as the doctor is qualified in Australia, this doctor is allowed to work in New Zealand as a qualified doctor. So this is really good for businesses because it allows them to find the right people for their business. So they are not limited to just their own country. They can find expertise in Australia and New Zealand. So either or. Okay? So now this is all the benefits of ANZFTA and ANZCERTA. I hope that is very clear to you guys, and hopefully the table really helps you all understand the keywords. Thank you.